Gemini said, "The sound of a marriage ending isn't a scream or a shatter. It is the wet, tearing noise of 20-pound bond paper being ripped in half. I thought the violence was the point. I thought the destruction was the end of the sentence. I didn't know that, in the eyes of the state of Illinois, a torn document is just as legally binding as a pristine one. I didn't know the clock had already started ticking. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you." The manila envelope slid across the granite kitchen island with a hiss that sounded like a snake moving through dry grass. It stopped exactly 3 inches from my hand. I didn't look up from the spreadsheet open on my laptop immediately. I finished typing the projection for the Q3 logistics audit, hit save, and then slowly closed the lid. My husband, Derek, was standing on the other side of the island. He was wearing his gray suit, the one he wore for board meetings and firings. His hands were clasped in front of him, resting on the cold stone. His knuckles were white. I reached out and touched the envelope. It was thick, heavy. My heart did a strange, stuttering flop in my chest, a physical reaction to a threat my brain hadn't processed yet. "What is this?" I asked. My voice sounded thin, reedy in the high-ceilinged kitchen. "Open it, Mara." I slid my thumb under the flap. The paper sliced my skin, a tiny, stinging paper cut that bloomed a single drop of bright red blood. I ignored it. I pulled out the stack of documents. The top page was heavy, formal. The words were bold and centered. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The world tilted. It wasn't a metaphor. I actually had to grab the edge of the counter to keep my balance because the floor seemed to pitch 45 degrees to the left. I read the names. Petitioner, Derek J. Vance. Respondent, Mara L. Vance. Is this a joke? I looked at him. He wasn't smiling. His face was a mask of tragic resignation, a look I had seen him practice in the mirror before laying off 50 employees at the plant last year. "I can't do it anymore, Mara," he said, his voice dropping to that deep, resonant register he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. "We're roommates. We're business partners. We aren't husband and wife. I filed this morning." "You filed?" I felt the blood draining from my face. My hands started to shake, rattling the papers. "Without talking to me? We just booked the Cape Cod trip yesterday. We bought the new patio furniture on Sunday." "Things meant to fill the void," he said. He walked around the island, closing the distance between us. He didn't touch me. He stood 2 feet away, invading my personal space just enough to make me feel small. "I want you to sign the acknowledgement of service. The last page. It just says you received them. It's not a divorce decree yet. It just starts the process." "I'm not signing anything." I threw the papers down. They fanned out, exposing legal jargon about assets and debts. "We need counseling. We need to talk. You don't just serve your wife papers on a Tuesday night." "I did talk, Mara. You were just always on your laptop. You're always handling a crisis for work or for your sister." The mention of my sister, Chloe, hit me like a physical blow. Guilt, hot and sharp, spiked in my stomach. He knew. He had to know I'd sent her $5,000 last month for the private facility in Arizona. "This isn't about Chloe," I whispered. "It's about focus," he said. "I need to know if I matter to you, more than the logistics, more than the chaos. Of course you matter." Tears finally spilled over, hot and humiliating. "Derek, please don't do this." He watched me cry. He watched the tears track through my foundation. He watched my nose turn red. He stood there for a full minute, just observing, like a scientist watching a specimen react to a stimulus. Then, his face softened. The mask crumbled. He let out a long, ragged sigh and reached for the papers. "God," he said. He grabbed the thick stack. "God, look at you. You're a mess." "You're divorcing me," I choked out. "No," he said. He ripped the stack in half. The sound was loud, violent. "No, I'm not." He tore the halves again, quarters, then eighths. He balled the shreds of paper in his large fists. "It was a test, Mara," he said, his voice trembling with manufactured emotion. I needed to see this. I needed to see that you'd break, that you weren't just a machine. I needed to know you'd fight for us. He dropped the confetti of our divorce into the stainless steel trash can. He stepped forward and pulled me into his chest. I smelled his cologne, sandalwood and expensive scotch. I buried my face in his shirt, sobbing, relief washing over me so powerful it felt like drowning. I'm sorry, I sobbed into his chest. I'm so sorry, Derek. Shh, he stroked my hair. It's okay, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to be better now, stronger. I clung to him, grateful that he hadn't left me. I was so grateful I didn't ask why the test required a legal filing number stamped in the upper right corner. The kitchen was quiet 2 hours later. Derek was upstairs in the shower. The pipes groaned in the walls, a familiar, comforting sound. I was on my hands and knees on the kitchen floor, a wet paper towel in my hand. He had missed a piece. When he had scooped the torn papers into the trash, a single triangular scrap had fluttered under the lip of the refrigerator. I saw it only because the recessed lighting caught the white edge against the dark hardwood. I reached under the appliance. My fingers brushed against dust bunnies and a dried grape. I hooked the paper with my fingernail and slid it out. It was a corner piece, jagged on 2 sides. It contained no text, just a stamp in blue ink. Clerk of the Circuit C, filed February 12th. Deputy Clerk R. Sim. I stared at the fragment. February 12th. That was today. My brain, usually a finely tuned instrument for analyzing supply chains and risk assessments, tried to categorize this data point. Hypothesis: Ace, he filed the papers for real, then changed his mind when he saw my reaction. Hypothesis B, he created a fake document to scare me, going so far as to forge a court stamp for authenticity. I stood up and walked to the trash can. I stepped on the pedal. The lid hissed open. Inside, the pile of torn paper sat on top of coffee grounds and eggshells. I reached in, my hand hovering. I should pull them out. I should tape them back together and read the fine print. The shower upstairs turned off. Panic flared. If he came down and found me taping together the divorce papers he had just destroyed as a romantic gesture, it would undo everything. It would prove I didn't trust him. It would prove I was the cold, analytical machine he accused me of being. I looked at the scrap in my hand, filed February 12th. He had gone to the courthouse. He had paid a fee. He had stood in line. Mara, Derek's voice called from the top of the stairs. Are you coming up? Coming, I yelled back. My voice was too bright, too eager. I walked to the sink and turned on the disposal. I dropped the scrap of paper into the black drain. I listened to the blades chew it into pulp. He tore them up, I told myself. The intent is what matters. He withdrew. It's over. I washed my hands, scrubbing until the skin was pink, trying to wash away the feeling of the dust from under the fridge. I turned off the light and went upstairs to my husband. The next morning, my phone vibrated against the mahogany surface of my desk. It was an unknown number with an Arizona area code. I checked the door of my office. Closed. I checked the glass wall that looked out over the logistics floor. My assistant, Jessica, was on a call, laughing at something. I slid the green icon to the right. Hello? Mara? The voice was raspy, thin. It sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well. Chloe, I breathed. I hunched over my desk, creating a cave of privacy with my body. You're not supposed to have a phone. Is everything okay? Did something happen? I borrowed it. From a guy in the detox wing. Listen, I need you to talk to the billing department. My stomach tightened. Billing? I paid the admission fee, Chloe. $5,000. I wired it last week. They say it didn't clear, she said. Her voice rose in pitch, bordering on hysteria. They say the transfer was reversed. They're going to kick me out, Mara. They're going to put me on the street in Phoenix. You know what happens if I'm on the street here? Reversed? That's impossible. I pulled up my banking app on my computer. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing my username and password. Access denied. Incorrect password. I frowned. I typed it again. Slower. MARAV82. Access denied. Your account has been locked for security purposes. Please visit a branch. Mara? Chloe sounded desperate. Are you there? I'm here, I said, my mind racing. Listen, there's a glitch with the bank. I must have triggered a fraud alert or something. I'll go to the branch on my lunch break. I'll fix it. You promised, she whispered. You said you'd handle it so Derek wouldn't know. I will, I said, though the confidence was leaking out of me. Does Derek know? Did he call you? No. Why would he call me? He hates me. Okay, just sit tight. Tell them the wire is coming. I swear, Chloe. I'll fix it. I hung up. I stared at the account-locked screen. My first thought wasn't that Derek had done this. My first thought was that I had been sloppy. I had moved money from the joint savings to my personal checking, then wired it. Maybe the bank's algorithm flagged the transfer pattern. I picked up my desk phone to call the bank, but then I stopped. Derek got alerts for the joint account. If I called and unfroze it, he might get a notification. Fraud alert resolved. I couldn't risk it. Not after last night. Not after he had forgiven me for being distant. If he found out I was funneling money to Chloe again after she stole his grandmother's earrings last Christmas, he wouldn't just tear up the papers, he would laminate them. I opened my purse. I had a hidden credit card, a generic Visa with a $6,000 limit I kept for emergencies. I would call the facility directly and pay over the phone. I would bypass the bank. I would solve the problem without leaving a trace. I dialed the rehab center. Billing, a woman answered. Hi, this is Mara Vance. I'm paying for Chloe Vance. I want to settle her balance with a credit card. One moment. Typing sounds. Okay, go ahead. I read the numbers. My hand was shaking. Declined, the woman said flatly. Try it again. It's a Visa. I tried it twice, ma'am. Declined. Do you have another card? I stared at the plastic rectangle. It wasn't connected to Derek. It was my card. Why would it be declined? No, I said. No, I'll wire the cash this afternoon. I hung up. I sat in the silence of my office, the hum of the air conditioning sounding like a roar in my ears. The walls felt like they were inching closer. When I pulled into the driveway that evening, there was a giant red bow on the roof of a car I didn't recognize. It was a pearl white SUV, luxury model, leather seats that looked like they had never been sat in. It was parked right in the center of our driveway, blocking the garage. Derek was standing on the porch, holding a glass of wine. He was smiling. A real smile this time, not the tragic mask from last night. I got out of my Honda, my knees weak. What is this? I asked, gesturing to the behemoth. A fresh start, Derek said. He walked down the steps and handed me the wine glass. He kissed my cheek. His lips were cold. I traded your car in this morning. They came and picked it up from the lot while you were in your meeting. Jessica gave them the keys. You traded my car? I looked at my Honda. It wasn't there. I had driven a loaner home because the dealership had called me saying there was a recall notice on my airbags. I realized now with a sick lurch that the recall call had been a lie. Derek, my laptop was in the trunk, my gym bag. All in the back seat of the new one, he beamed. Safe and sound. I wanted to surprise you. You've been driving that sedan for 5 years. You deserve safety. You deserve luxury. I looked at the SUV. It was beautiful. It was expensive. It was also a lease in his name. I loved my car, I said softly. This is better, he said, draping his arm around my shoulders. The weight of his arm felt heavy, like a yoke. It has tracking, automatic braking, lane assist. I added you to the insurance. It's all taken care of. Thank you, I said. The words tasted like ash. It's amazing. I wanted to show you, he whispered in my ear. I wanted to show you that I'm invested. I'm not going anywhere. He squeezed my shoulder. "Oh, and I fixed the bank thing," he added casually. My heart stopped. "What bank thing?" "We got a fraud alert this morning. Suspicious activity on the joint account. Someone trying to move money to Arizona. Probably a skimmer." He took a sip of his wine. "I told them to freeze everything and issue new cards. They'll be here in 3 days. I transferred the balance to my private savings in the meantime, just to keep it safe from the hackers." He looked at me. His eyes were clear, blue, and utterly devoid of suspicion. "You have to be careful, Mara," he said. "There are people out there who will steal everything you have if you aren't paying attention." "Right," I said. "Hackers." I took a long drink of the wine. It was a Cabernet. It tasted like iron. The funeral home smelled of lilies and formaldehyde, a cloying sweetness that stuck to the back of my throat. Derek's father had died on Monday. The test had happened on Tuesday. Today was Thursday. The visitation. The room was packed. Derek's family was old money, or at least they pretended to be. His mother, barely 5 feet tall and made entirely of hairspray and malice, held court by the open casket. I stood by Derek's side near the entrance, shaking hands. My feet ached in my heels. "I'm so sorry for your loss," I said for the 100th time to a man in a charcoal suit. "Thank you," the man said. He didn't look at me. He looked at Derek. "Rough week, buddy," the man said to Derek. He had a thick, meaty hand and a gold pinky ring. "We're getting through it," Derek said. He gripped the man's hand. There was a weird energy to the shake. It wasn't a condolence shake. It was a transaction, a deal being sealed. "You get that paperwork sorted?" the man asked. His voice was low, a gravelly rumble. "Taken care of," Derek said. He didn't blink. "It's all in the shredder." The man laughed, a short barking sound. "That's one way to handle it. Just watch your dates, Dee. The clock doesn't stop just because you shredded the receipt." "I know the rules, Tony," Derek said. His voice was sharp, a warning. Tony looked at me then. His eyes widened slightly, as if he had just realized I was standing there. "Mrs. Vance?" He nodded. "Sorry. Bad time for business talk." "It's fine," I said. "Do you work with Derek?" "Sort of." Tony grinned. It wasn't a nice grin. "I'm an independent contractor. I deliver things, messages, packages, that sort of thing." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd of mourners. I watched him go. A shiver crawled up my spine. I knew that voice. I closed my eyes, replaying the memory of Tuesday night. The doorbell ringing, Derek answering it while I was in the pantry. The low murmur of voices. "Here you go, Mr. Vance. Sign here." That was Tony. Tony wasn't a colleague. Tony was a process server. And he had just told Derek, "The clock doesn't stop just because you shredded the receipt." I looked at my husband. He was dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief, accepting a hug from an elderly aunt. He looked devastated. He looked like the perfect grieving son. The nausea hit me then, sudden and violent. I waited until 2 a.m. The house was silent. The new SUV sat in the driveway like a white ghost. Derek was asleep. I had listened to his breathing even out, had waited for the soft snore that indicated deep REM sleep. I slipped out of bed. The floorboards were cold. I tiptoed down the hallway to his study. The door was ajar. I pushed it open. The room smelled of his cigars. I sat at his desk. I opened his MacBook. The screen flared to life, bright and blinding in the dark room. "Enter password." I typed, "Vance Logistics 2024 incorrect password." I frowned. That had been his password for everything for 2 years. I typed, "Derek and Mara 4 ever incorrect password." I typed, "Chicago Bulls 23 incorrect password." I sat back. He had changed it. He had changed it recently. I looked at the desk. It was neat, organized. A stack of condolence cards sat on the corner, a notepad. I picked up the notepad. I held it at an angle to the light from the screen, looking for indentations. There were none. He hadn't written anything down. I opened the top drawer. Pens, stapler, a checkbook. I opened the checkbook. The register was filled out in his precise architectural handwriting. February 10th, flowers, $200, February 11th, Tony G., $500 cash. February 12th, filing fee, Cook County, $388. The breath left my lungs. February 12th, filing fee. He had paid Tony $500 cash the day before he filed. He had paid the filing fee the day of the test. He hadn't withdrawn it. He hadn't stopped it. The clock was ticking. I remembered the torn paper. 30 days to respond. If I didn't respond, he won by default. I looked at the calendar on his wall. Today was February 15th. I had 27 days left, but he had frozen the accounts. He had taken my car. He had cut off my sister. He wasn't testing our marriage. He was liquidating it. The sun was too bright the next morning. It glared off the hood of the white SUV, a sharp, blinding white that made my eyes ache behind my sunglasses. I sat in the Walgreens parking lot 3 miles from my office. The engine was running, the air conditioning blasting against my knuckles, which were white where they gripped the steering wheel. I had told Jessica I was going to get coffee. Instead, I had driven here, to a strip mall that smelled of exhaust and frying oil from the burger joint next door. I looked down at the plastic bag in my lap. Inside was a prepaid phone, a burner, $30 a minute. I ripped the plastic packaging open with my teeth, the taste of polymer bitter on my tongue. My manicure, usually perfect, was chipped on my thumb. I fumbled with the battery, snapping the back onto the cheap black plastic device. It booted up with a cheerful, pixelated chime that sounded obscene in the silence of the car. I didn't want to make the call. If I made the call, I was acknowledging that my life was a crime scene. I dialed the number for the Cook County Circuit Clerk. I had memorized it from the website on my work computer, clearing the history immediately after. Ring, ring. Circuit Court Clerk, Domestic Relations Division. Please listen carefully as our menu options have changed. The robotic voice was calm, indifferent. For case status, press 1. I pressed 1. The keypad beeped loudly. Please enter the case number followed by the pound sign. I closed my eyes. I didn't have the case number. I only had the date. If you do not have a case number, press 2 to search by name. I pressed 2. Please speak the last name of the petitioner. Vance, I said. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat and said it again, louder. Vance. I heard Vance. Is this correct? Press 1. I pressed 1. Please speak the first name. Derek. Searching. The silence on the line was filled with static. I watched a woman in pajama pants push a cart full of soda towards a minivan. She looked tired. I envied her. She probably knew exactly who her husband was. I found one active case for Derek Vance filed on February 12th, 2026, case number 26D1094, status, pending service. Next court date, none scheduled. Pending service. The air left my lungs in a rush. He hadn't withdrawn it. He hadn't dismissed it. It was active. It was real. To hear the details of the filing, press 1. I hung up. I didn't need a robot to tell me the details. I needed to see the paper. I shoved the phone under the passenger seat, wedging it between the floor mat and the track. I checked my mirror. My face was pale, my eyes wide and dark. I pinched my cheeks, trying to force color back into them. I had to go back to work. I had to pretend I had just gone for coffee. The courthouse was a fortress of gray stone and misery. It loomed over the downtown plaza, a monument to broken promises. I had parked the SUV at a parking garage 4 blocks away, paying cash. I told the attendant I lost my ticket so there wouldn't be a timestamp on the receipt. I walked the 4 blocks in the freezing wind, my coat pulled tight around me. Inside, the security line was a snake of humanity. Lawyers in ill-fitting suits checking their watches, a woman crying into a tissue, a man holding a toddler who was screaming with the kind of pure, unadulterated rage I wished I could express. I put my purse on the conveyor belt. "Boots!" the guard grunted. He didn't look up. I unzipped my boots. I walked through the metal detector in my socks. The floor was cold and gritty. Beep. Step back. "It's my underwire," I whispered. "It always happens." "Wand," he yelled. A female guard stepped forward. She ran the black wand over my chest, my hips, my legs. It was invasive. It was humiliating. I stood there, arms raised, while strangers watched. "Clear," she said. I grabbed my boots and hopped on one foot, shoving them back on. I ran to the elevators, 4th floor, records division. The room was vast, filled with rows of metal shelves and the smell of old paper and dust. I took a ticket from the red dispenser, number 42. The digital board on the wall read, number 38. I waited. I watched the clock on the wall. The second hand ticked with agonizing slowness. Tick, tick, tick. Every second was a second Derek might be checking the location of the SUV. Every second was a second I wasn't at my desk. "Number 42, a clerk called out. She was chewing gum, looking at a magazine. I rushed to the window. "I need to see a file," I said. "Case number 26D1094, Vance." She sighed, a long, exaggerated exhale that ruffled her bangs. She typed the number into her computer. "ID," I handed her my driver's license. She looked at it. Then she looked at me. "You're the respondent?" "Yes." "You haven't filed an appearance yet." "I know. I just want to see the file." $10 for copies. Cash only for unrepresented parties. I dug a $10 bill out of my pocket. I slammed it on the counter. She disappeared into the stacks. I tapped my fingers on the scratched plexiglass. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. She came back 5 minutes later with a thick file folder. She slid it under the glass. I opened it. There it was. The same document he had shown me in the kitchen, the same font, the same layout. But this one wasn't torn. This one had the blue stamp in the corner. Filed. And there was a second document underneath it. Affidavit of service. I, Anthony G. Ricci, being first duly sworn on oath, depose and state that I served a copy of the petition for dissolution of marriage upon the respondent, Mara L. Vance, personally at her residence on February 12, 2026, at 6:45 p.m. He had signed it. It was notarized. Legally, the clock had started 3 days ago. I had 27 days left before Derek could take everything I owned without me ever stepping foot in a courtroom. I took the file to a wooden table in the corner, away from the prying eyes of the clerk. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely turn the pages. I skipped the boilerplate legal language, the jurisdiction, the marriage date, the lack of minor children. I went straight to the counts. Count 1. Dissolution of marriage. Irreconcilable differences have caused the irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. Standard. Count 2. Dissipation of marital assets. I froze. Petitioner alleges that respondent has, for a period of no less than 2 years, systematically dissipated marital funds for non-marital purposes. Specifically, respondent has transferred sums totaling in excess of $50,000 to third parties, known to be involved in illicit drug distribution and consumption. The room spun. Illicit drug distribution. He was talking about Chloe. He was talking about the rehab centers, the sober living houses, the therapy. He wasn't calling it healthcare. He was calling it drug funding. Petitioner requests that the court award petitioner the entirety of the marital residence, the entirety of the 401k accounts, and the entirety of the joint investment portfolio as reimbursement for said dissipation. He was framing me. He was taking my loyalty to my sister, my desperate, quiet attempts to keep her alive, and twisting it into financial infidelity. If I fought this, I would have to drag Chloe into court. I would have to put her on the stand. I would have to expose her addiction, her relapses, her thefts, to the public record. Derek knew that. He knew I would burn myself to the ground before I humiliated my sister. He had built a trap that relied on my conscience to keep me silent. I flipped to the financial affidavit he had filed. Petitioner's income, $12,000 per month. Liar. He made 3 times that. He had hidden the bonuses. He had hidden the dividends from the logistics company. Respondent's income, $14,000 per month. He had inflated my income. He was setting it up for alimony. He wanted me to pay him. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, a hysterical, jagged thing. It was so audacious. It was so evil. I closed the file. I didn't make copies. I didn't want the clerk to hear the copier running. I didn't want a paper trail. I walked out of the courthouse into the cold wind. I felt stripped, exposed. He wasn't just leaving me, he was punishing me. The dinner party was an exercise in torture. Derek's aunt and uncle were seated at our dining room table, eating the catering Derek had ordered: lasagna, garlic bread, comfort food for the grieving family. I was wearing my black dress, the modest one with the high neck. I poured wine. I passed bread baskets. I played the role of the grieving daughter-in-law. "Derek, this wine is excellent," Uncle Stan said, raising his glass. "You always had good taste." "Mara picked it out," Derek said, smiling at me across the table. The candlelight flickered in his eyes, making them look hollow. "She's the one with the palate. I just signed the checks." He reached out and squeezed my hand. His palm was warm, his fingers interlaced with mine. "I don't know what I'd do without her," he said, "especially this week. She's been my rock." "You two are lucky," Aunt Martha sighed. "So many couples fall apart after a death in the family. It's the stress." "We're a team," Derek said. "Right, honey." "A team," I echoed. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Always. I looked at the table. To the right of Derek's wine glass, his phone was face down on the tablecloth. It wasn't centered. It was angled slightly toward me. The tiny microphone hole at the bottom of the device was pointed directly at my mouth. He was recording. He was baiting me. He wanted me to say something incriminating. Or maybe he just wanted me to agree that we were a team so he could play it later to prove I was delusional or to prove I had forgiven him for something. "I was thinking," Derek said, his thumb stroking the back of my hand. "Maybe we should sell the lake house. It's too much work. We could use the money to pay off the mortgage here, be debt-free." The lake house was my inheritance. My grandmother left it to me before I met Derek. I had put his name on the deed 3 years ago because he said it would help with taxes. "That's a big decision," I said carefully. "Maybe we should wait until things settle down." "Why wait?" he pressed. "Unless you don't trust my judgment?" The trap snapped shut. If I said I didn't trust him, I created conflict in front of witnesses. If I agreed, I gave verbal consent to sell my asset. "I trust you," I said, "but I think your dad's funeral is tomorrow. We shouldn't make financial decisions while we're grieving." "Smart girl," Uncle Stan nodded. "Listen to her, Derek." Derek's smile didn't waver, but his grip on my hand tightened. Pain shot up my knuckles. "You're right," he said. "Always the analytical one. That's why I love you." He let go of my hand. I pulled it back into my lap, rubbing the red marks his ring had left on my skin. The next day, I called in sick. I waited until Derek left for the funeral home to help his mother with the arrangements. I watched the white SUV back out of the driveway on the security camera feed on my phone. As soon as he was gone, I called an Uber. I didn't use the app on my phone. I walked to the gas station on the corner and asked the clerk to call a cab for me. I paid him $20 for the trouble. The law office of Blackwood and Associates was in a glass tower on the river. High rent, high stakes. I sat in the conference room. The table was mahogany, polished to a mirror shine. Robert Blackwood walked in. He was 60, silver-haired, and smelled of expensive soap. He didn't smile. "Mrs. Vance," he said, "I reviewed the summary you gave my paralegal. It's a classic default trap. Nasty business. Can you stop it?" I asked. "Of course. We file an appearance, we file a counter petition, we freeze the assets. But we have to move fast. You have..." "What? 26 days?" "Yes." "Okay. My retainer is $25,000, plus costs." I blinked. $25,000? It's a complex case. He's alleging dissipation. We'll need forensic accountants to trace the funds he's hiding. It gets expensive. I can pay it," I said. "I have savings." I pulled out my wallet. I took out my platinum card. The one linked to my personal account, the one I thought was safe. "Do you take credit cards?" "We do." He took the card. He walked out of the room. I stared at the view of the Chicago River. The water was gray and churning. He came back 2 minutes later. He held the card out to me. "Declined," he said. His voice was devoid of judgment, which made it worse. "That's impossible," I said. "It's my personal account. He's not on it." The issuer declined it, marked as lost or stolen. I stared at the card. Derek. He must have called the credit card company pretending to be me, or just reported it online. He knew my mother's maiden name. He knew my social security number. He knew everything. "I have another one," I said. I pulled out my emergency visa, the one I tried to use for Chloe. "Try this." He took it. He came back. "Declined, insufficient funds." Insufficient funds? The limit was $6,000. I hadn't used it in months. Then I remembered. The fraud alert he mentioned. When he fixed the bank, he probably paid off the credit card balance with a bad transfer, or maxed it out on cash advances before reporting it. "Mrs. Vance," Blackwood said, leaning against the doorframe, "it seems your husband has been very thorough." "I have money," I said, my voice rising. "I have a 401k, I have half the house." "You have assets," he corrected. "You don't have liquidity, and without a retainer, I can't file an appearance. I can't represent you. You can't just help me? I'll pay you as soon as the judge unfreezes the accounts." "I'm sorry, we don't work on contingency in divorce cases. It's unethical." He opened the door wider, a clear dismissal. "If you can secure the funds, give us a call, but don't wait too long. Defaults are hard to vacate." I walked out of the office. I took the elevator down 40 floors. My ears popped. I stood on the sidewalk. I had $40 cash in my pocket. No car, no access to my money, no lawyer. And my husband was expecting me at a wake in 3 hours. I sat on a bench by the river, watching the water slap against the concrete wall. The wind bit through my coat. I was shivering, but I couldn't bring myself to move. I analyzed the board. Derek held every card. He had the money. He had the legal momentum. He had the element of surprise. If I went home and screamed at him, if I threw the vase at his head, if I told him I knew everything, he would win. He would call the police. He would say I was unstable. He would play the recording of me agreeing to sell the lake house. He would show the court the drug payments to my sister. He would get an emergency order of protection and kick me out of the house. I would be homeless, penniless, and divorced within a week. There was only one move left. I had to go back. I had to walk into that house. I had to kiss him. I had to sleep in the same bed as him. I had to pretend that his test had worked. I had to make him believe I was the stupid, trusting, emotional wife he wanted me to be. I had to play the long game. I needed to find money he didn't know about. I needed to find a lawyer who would take a payment plan, or find a way to liquidate something without him seeing the alert. I stood up. My legs were stiff. I hailed a cab with my last $20. "Where to?" the driver asked. Home, I said. The word felt like a lie. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a battlefield. And I was walking behind enemy lines with no weapon but my silence. The silence in the house was a physical weight, heavy and suffocating like a wool blanket soaked in water. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching surfaces, checking locks, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It didn't drop. It was thrown. It was Sunday morning, day 3 of the 30-day countdown. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, when my burner phone buzzed against my thigh. I had taped it to the inside of my calf with medical tape, hidden under my wide-leg trousers. I went to the pantry and closed the door. I pulled the pant leg up and peeled the tape back. The skin was red and irritated. "Hello? Miss Vance?" The voice was clinical, detached. "This is Director Reynolds from Serenity Hills." My stomach dropped. "Is she okay? Is Chloe okay?" "She's alive," Reynolds said, "but we had to discharge her an hour ago. She was found with substances in her room, and given the payment situation, we couldn't offer her a spot in the detox wing." "Discharged," I hissed. "To where? She has nowhere to go in Arizona." She called a friend, a man named Spider. He picked her up. Spider, the dealer she had sworn she was done with, the one who had broken her arm 2 years ago. "You let her get in a car with him?" "She's an adult, Ms. Vance, and you are no longer the guarantor on her account. The credit card was declined for the 3rd time this morning." "We are not a charity." "I have the money," I lied, tears pricking my eyes. "I just need a few days. My husband, there was a mix-up. When you have the funds, you can call us. Until then, she is no longer our patient." The line went dead. I sank to the floor of the pantry, surrounded by cans of organic soup and boxes of artisanal pasta. I buried my face in my knees. Derek hadn't just cut me off. He had calculated this. He knew the payment schedule. He knew Chloe was fragile. By freezing the accounts on Thursday, he ensured the check would bounce on Friday, and the eviction would happen on Sunday. He was counting on me being too distracted by my sister's crisis to notice the legal clock ticking down on my own marriage. He wanted me panicked. He wanted me weak. I imagined Chloe in a dirty car with a man named Spider, high and terrified. I bit my knuckle to keep from screaming. The pain was sharp, grounding. I couldn't save her today. If I tried to fly to Arizona, Derek would know. He would serve me with the emergency order while I was gone, changing the locks. I would lose the house, the assets, the power to help her ever again. I had to sacrifice the battle to win the war. I wiped my face. I stood up. I walked out of the pantry and poured a cup of coffee. My hand was steady. The crash of the trash can lid sounded like a gunshot. I jumped, spilling hot coffee on my wrist. Derek was standing by the recycling bin in the mudroom. He was holding something small and white. It was the business card, Robert Blackwood and Associates. I had thrown it away at the gas station 3 blocks away. I had buried it in a public trash can. How did he have it? "Mara," he said. His voice was soft, disappointed. "What is this?" He walked into the kitchen. He placed the card on the island right next to the fruit bowl. "I found this in your coat pocket when I was hanging it up," he said. Liar. I didn't put it in my pocket. I threw it away. He'd gone through my purse, or maybe he had tracked my phone to the law office building and was fishing. I panicked, I said. My brain scrambled for a foothold. After the bank thing, I didn't know what was happening. I thought maybe my identity was stolen. I just walked into the first office I saw. Blackwood is a divorce attorney, Mara, a shark. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. "You went to a divorce lawyer? After everything we talked about? After I poured my heart out to you?" I was scared, I yelled, leaning into the lie. "You froze the accounts, Derek. You took my car. What was I supposed to think?" "You were supposed to think I was protecting us." He slammed his hand on the counter. I told you it was fraud. I told you I was handling it, and you go behind my back and hire a hitman? I didn't hire him, I whispered. I couldn't. I don't have any money. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he let out a laugh, a short, disbelief-filled sound. You really don't trust me, do you? He asked. You think I'm some kind of monster. I don't know what to think, I said. You served me papers, Derek. And I tore them up. He grabbed the business card and ripped it in half. Just like I'm tearing this up. I'm trying to save this marriage, Mara. But you have to work with me. You have to stop acting like I'm the enemy. He walked over to me. He put his hands on my shoulders. His grip was tight. I was going to go to the courthouse tomorrow, he said, his voice low and intense. I was going to withdraw the petition formally. I wanted to surprise you, but now I don't know if I should. My heart hammered. Withdraw it. Please, I said. Please withdraw it. I want to believe you. Do you? He searched my face. Because if you're plotting against me, Mara, if you're hiding things, it will destroy us. I'm not, I lied. I'm just scared. Okay, he said. He kissed my forehead. Okay, I'll go tomorrow morning. I'll bring you the receipt, the dismissal order. Will that make you happy? Yes, I breathed. Yes, please. He didn't go Monday morning or Tuesday. Wednesday night, he took me to dinner at Le Bouchon. It was our anniversary spot. Small, intimate, French. We sat in a booth in the back. The lighting was dim. The waiter poured a bottle of Bordeaux that cost more than my first car. I didn't make it to the clerk today, Derek said, cutting into his steak. Meetings all day. The merger is a nightmare. I felt the panic rising again. You said Monday, Derek. It's Wednesday. I know. God, you're relentless. He put his fork down. You really think I'm trying to screw you, don't you? I just want it gone, I said. I want to feel safe. Fine. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. I'll call my lawyer right now, on speaker. I'll tell him to file the dismissal electronically, tonight. Happy? He unlocked the phone. He scrolled through his contacts. He tapped a name, Stephen J., lawyer. He put the phone on the table between us. Ring. Hello? A voice answered. Deep, professional. Steve, it's Derek. Derek, late call. Everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. Listen, Mara and I worked it out. I want you to kill the petition, file a non-suit, dismissal, whatever you call it. Are you sure? Steve asked. Once it's gone, it's gone. I'm sure. She's the one, Steve. Always has been. Derek looked at me and winked. All right, Steve sighed. I'll log in and file it tonight. You'll get the confirmation email in the morning. Thanks, Steve. Send the bill to the office. Will do. Good night. Derek hung up. He smiled at me, a triumphant, boyish grin. There, he said. Done. Are we good now? I smiled back. My lips felt numb. We're good, I said. Thank you, Derek. I picked up my wine glass to hide my shaking hand, because I had seen the screen. When the call connected, the screen had gone black, the way it does when you hold it to your ear to prevent accidental touches. But it was lying flat on the table. The proximity sensor shouldn't have triggered, unless he was using an app, a fake call app. I had seen the icon for a split second before he locked the phone, a green telephone with a little drama mask next to it. There was no Steve. There was no dismissal. He had recorded the lawyer's lines himself, leaving pauses for his own responses. He had rehearsed this. He was looking at me with such love, such open affection, and he was lying to my face with a technological sophistication that terrified me. I'll be right back, I said. Powder room. I walked to the back of the restaurant. My legs felt like they were made of wood. I pushed into the small, single-stall bathroom and locked the door. I turned on the faucet. Cold water. I splashed it on my face, ruining my mascara. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were hollow. My skin was gray. He hated me. It wasn't just greed. It wasn't just about the money or the house. You don't go to these lengths just for assets. You do this because you want to destroy someone. You want to make them feel crazy. You want to watch them beg for a safety you have already stolen. I remembered the test, the tearing of the papers, the way he held me while I cried. He had enjoyed it. He had fed on my relief. I sank to the floor, leaning against the cold tile wall. A sob ripped out of my chest, harsh and ugly. I thought about the last 10 years, the sacrifices I made for his career, the way I distanced myself from my family because he said they were toxic, the way I changed my hair, my clothes, my laugh to fit into his world. It was all a long con. I wasn't his wife. I was his mark. I covered my mouth with my hand, stifling the sound. I couldn't let him hear me. I couldn't let him know I knew. If I walked out there and confronted him, he would win. He would deny it. He would say I was paranoid. He would say the screen went black because of a glitch. I had to be smarter. I stood up. I dried my face with a rough paper towel. I reapplied my lipstick. Ruby Woo, my armor. I looked at the woman in the mirror. She looked broken, but her eyes were hard. 20 days left, I told her. You can scream in 20 days. I unlocked the door and went back to finish my expensive wine. Day 29. The funeral for Derek's father had been delayed 2 weeks due to a dispute over the burial plot. It was now March 12th. The deadline to file my response was tomorrow, March 13th. I sat in the back of the black stretch limousine. The air smelled of new leather and old lilies. The partition was up. We were sealed in. Derek was sitting next to me, scrolling on his phone. He looked handsome in his black suit. He looked rich. I was wearing a black dress that cost $800. Underneath it, taped to my stomach, was a manila envelope. Inside was my response to petition for dissolution of marriage. I had typed it myself on a library computer 3 days ago. I had forged a notarization stamp using a kit I bought online. A risk, a felony, but I had no choice. I couldn't get to a notary without him knowing. I had the filing fee in cash, $388, stuffed in my bra. You okay? Derek asked, not looking up from his phone. You've been quiet. Just a headache, I said. The smell of the flowers. It'll be over soon, he said. Service is at 2, burial at 3, reception at 5. We'll be home by 8. I looked at my watch. It was 1:45 p.m. The courthouse closed at 5 p.m. If I didn't file this document today, he could move for a default judgment tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. He could walk into court and say, "She didn't respond, Your Honor, I win." And he would. Derek, I said, I think I need to stop. He looked up, annoyed. Stop? We're 10 minutes from the church. It's a female thing, I whispered, looking down. I started early. It's bad. I need a pharmacy. He grimaced. The universal male reaction to menstruation talk, discomfort mixed with a desire to be anywhere else. Can't you wait until the church? They have bathrooms. I can't wait, I said, putting panic into my voice. It's messy, Derek. Please, there's a CVS on 4th. He sighed, loud and long. He tapped on the partition. Driver, pull over at the CVS up here. The limo slowed. It pulled to the curb. Hurry up, Derek said. My mother will kill us if we're late. I'll run, I said. I opened the heavy door. The cold air hit me. I stepped out onto the sidewalk. Leave your purse, he said. You don't need it. I froze. My purse had my ID, but the envelope was taped to my skin. The cash was in my bra. Right, I said. I dropped my Chanel bag on the seat. Be right back. I slammed the door. I walked into the CVS. I went straight to the feminine hygiene aisle. I grabbed a box of tampons. I waited until I saw the limo driver get out to smoke a cigarette. I ran out the back emergency exit. The alarm shrieked, a piercing rhythmic wail. I didn't stop. I pushed through the heavy metal door into the alley. I kicked off my heels. I couldn't run in 4-inch stilettos. I picked them up, holding them like weapons. I ran in my stocking feet. The pavement was cold and wet. There was broken glass. I felt a sharp sting in my left arch, but I ignored it. The courthouse was 6 blocks away. I checked my watch. 1:58 p.m. I had to get there, file the papers, and get back to the church before Derek realized I wasn't in the bathroom. I sprinted down the alley. My breath tore at my throat. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against the cash in my bra. Block 1. A garbage truck blocked the way. I squeezed past it, smelling rotting vegetables. Block 2. A group of teenagers smoking. They yelled something at me. I kept running. Block 3. I stepped in a puddle. Icy water soaked my sheer stockings. I turned onto Main Street. The courthouse loomed ahead. I stopped to put my shoes back on. I couldn't walk into court barefoot. I jammed my wet, bleeding feet into the tight leather. The pain was blinding. I limped toward the entrance. My reflection in the glass door was terrifying. Hair wild, face flushed, black dress mud-splattered at the hem. I didn't look like the wife of a logistics mogul. I looked like a woman fleeing a crime scene. And in a way, I was fleeing the scene of my own murder before the body could be found. I pushed through the revolving doors. "Security!" a guard yelled. "Slow down! I'm late!" I gasped. "Court deadline." I threw my shoes on the belt. I ran through the metal detector. Beep. "Step back." "No," I moaned. "Please." "It's just the underwire." "Step back, ma'am." I stepped back. I was wasting seconds. Precious, irreplaceable seconds. Derek would be sending the driver into the CVS by now. He would be calling my phone, which was in my purse in the car. He would know. The metal detector beeped again, a shrill, accusing sound that echoed in the high atrium of the courthouse. I wasn't carrying a weapon, but my body was vibrating with so much adrenaline, I felt like I could set off a Geiger counter. "Ma'am, step aside." The guard, a woman with eyes like flint, pointed to a taped square on the floor. "Arms out, legs apart." "I don't have time," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "Please, it's the underwire in my bra. It happens every time." "Arms out." I stepped into the box. I raised my arms. She ran the wand over my ribs, the black plastic passing inches from the cash I had stuffed into the lace of my bra. If she felt the envelope taped to my stomach, if she asked me to lift my dress... The wand beeped at my chest. "Underwire," she grunted. She patted my sides. Her hand brushed the edge of the manila envelope. She paused. My heart stopped. I held my breath, waiting for the question. "What is this? Why are you taped up like a drug mule?" "You're soaking wet," she said, pulling her hand back and wiping it on her pants. "Go ahead." I grabbed my shoes from the belt. I didn't stop to put them on. I ran toward the elevators in my stocking feet, slipping on the polished terrazzo. The elevator doors were closing. I jammed my hand into the gap. The rubber bumper hit my wrist, bruising the bone, but the doors bounced back. "Hold it," I gasped. I squeezed inside. A man in a suit looked at my muddy feet, then at my face. He pressed himself into the corner, clutching his briefcase as if I were contagious. "4th floor," I said, "please." He pressed the button. We rode in silence. I watched the numbers tick up. 2, 3, 4. The doors opened. I sprinted. The line for the circuit clerk's office was out the door. 20 people deep, lawyers with stacks of files, pro-se litigants looking lost and angry. I looked at the clock on the wall. 2:15 p.m. I had been gone from the limo for 17 minutes. Derek would be texting me. He would be wondering why buying a box of tampons took this long. He would be sending the driver. I couldn't wait in line. I scanned the room. I saw the emergency motions window. It was empty, but there was a sign. Attorneys only. I didn't care. I walked up to it. The clerk, a young man with a headset, didn't look up. "Attorneys only, ma'am. Line starts back there." "I have an emergency," I said, leaning over the counter. I lowered my voice. "My husband is filing for a default judgment tomorrow morning. I'm the respondent. I have my response here. If I don't file it today, I lose my house." He looked up. He took in my wet hair, the mud on my dress, the desperation in my eyes. "Line starts back there," he repeated, pointing a pen at the queue. "Please," I whispered. "He thinks I'm at a funeral. I ran here. I have cash." He hesitated. He looked at the supervisor in the back who was on the phone. Then he looked back at me. He sighed, a heavy, weary sound. "Give it here." I ripped the envelope off my stomach. The tape tore my skin, a sharp, stinging pain that made my eyes water. I pulled out the document and the cash. He took the papers. Stamp, stamp, stamp. The sound was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. It was the sound of a shield being raised. "Receipt?" he asked. "Yes, please." He handed me the pink carbon copy, filed March 12th, 2:22 p.m. I shoved it into my bra. "Thank you," I said. "You just saved my life." "Next," he yelled, looking past me. The run back was worse. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the burning in my lungs and the throbbing in my feet. I stopped in the alley behind the CVS. I leaned against a dumpster, gasping for air. I checked my reflection in a puddle. I was a disaster. Mud on my ankles, hair frizzed, mascara smudged. I couldn't go back like this. Derek would know. He would know I didn't get this dirty inside a pharmacy. I saw a hose attached to the back of the building. I turned the handle. Freezing water sputtered out. I washed the mud off my legs. I splashed water on my face, scrubbing away the smudge. I slicked my hair back, twisting it into a severe wet knot at the base of my neck. It wasn't perfect, but it was explainable. I felt faint. I went outside for air. It started to rain. It wasn't raining, but maybe he wouldn't notice. No, that was a bad lie. I slipped. That was better. I went out the back to smoke because I was stressed, and I slipped in a puddle. I took a deep breath. I put my shoes back on. I walked into the CVS through the back door. I grabbed a box of tampons from the shelf. I walked to the front counter. "Just this," I said to the cashier. I paid with the cash I had left. I walked out the front door. The limo was there. The driver was standing on the sidewalk looking up and down the street. He saw me. "Mrs. Vance." Mr. Vance was getting worried. "I'm sorry," I said, holding up the CVS bag. The line was long, and I had a bit of an accident. I slipped on some water in the aisle. He looked at my wet dress. He nodded, uninterested. "Hop in." He opened the door. I slid into the cool, dark interior. Derek looked up from his phone. His eyes narrowed. "What happened to you?" he asked. "You look like a drowned rat." "Some kid spilled a slushie in the aisle," I lied, my voice trembling. "I slipped. It was humiliating." I leaned back, closing my eyes. I pressed my arm against my side, feeling the crinkle of the pink receipt against my ribs. "Did you get what you needed?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I got exactly what I needed." The funeral was a blur of black fabric and murmured platitudes. I stood by Derek's side, shaking hands, nodding, accepting condolences. I felt powerful. For the first time in a month, I wasn't the victim. I was the operator. Every time Derek squeezed my shoulder, thinking he was steering me, I had to suppress a smile. He was steering a car with no brakes, and he didn't even know it. At the reception, we sat at the head table. Derek was drinking scotch. He was relaxed, happy even. "You did good today," he whispered, leaning in close. His breath smelled of alcohol and mint. "I know it was hard." "It was," I said, "but we got through it." "Tomorrow," he said, staring out at the room. "Tomorrow, everything changes. We can finally put all this stress behind us." I knew what he meant. Tomorrow was day 31. Tomorrow, he would file for the default judgment. He thought he was telling me we would be debt-free. He was actually telling me I would be destitute. "Yes," I said, taking a sip of water. "Tomorrow will be a new beginning." He squeezed my knee under the table. It was a possessive gesture. Ownership. "You know I love you, right?" he asked. "Even when I'm tough on you. It's because I want us to be better." "I know," I said. And I did know. I knew exactly what kind of love this was. It was the love a butcher has for a prize cow. "I have a surprise for you," he said, "for after the legal stuff is settled tomorrow, I booked us a trip. The Maldives, just us. No phones, no internet." No escape, I thought. "That sounds perfect," I said. I looked at his watch. 7 p.m. The electronic filing system would update at midnight. His lawyer would get a notification. New filing in case 26, D1094, response to petition. He would wake up to it. "I can't wait," I whispered. The reading of the will was scheduled for 2 days later at the family estate attorney's office. Derek was edgy. He had been on the phone all morning, shouting behind closed doors. He hadn't said a word to me since he woke up. He knew. We sat in the lawyer's office, heavy oak paneling, leather chairs. Derek's mother was there, looking frail and vindictive. Mr. Henderson, the attorney, cleared his throat. "The estate is substantial," he began. "However, there are some complications regarding the distribution to Derek, specifically regarding the marital clauses." Derek leaned forward. "What complications? It's straightforward. My father left it to me." "To you," Henderson corrected, peering over his spectacles, "with the stipulation that if you are in the midst of divorce proceedings, the funds are to be held in trust until the dissolution is finalized to prevent commingling of assets." Derek froze. "We aren't in divorce proceedings." I withdrew the petition. He looked at me. A warning shot. Play along. "Actually," Henderson said, pulling a paper from his file, "according to the court docket, the case is active. A response was filed by Mrs. Vance on March 12th, contesting the grounds and the dissipation of assets." The room went silent. Derek turned to me slowly. His face was purple. The vein in his forehead throbbed. "You filed?" he whispered. "You filed a response?" "I did," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "I couldn't let the default happen, Derek. Not with those lies about me." "Lies?" He stood up. "You ungrateful—" "I tried to save you. I tried to give you a chance to fix it." "Sit down, Derek," his mother snapped. "No." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "She's stealing from us. She's funneling money to her junkie sister. I filed that petition to stop the bleeding." "You filed it to steal my inheritance," I said, standing up to meet him. "You filed it to trap me. You wanted a default judgment so you could take the house, the accounts, everything. You never intended to withdraw it." "I did," he screamed. "I was going to withdraw it once you learned your lesson, once you learned that you can't lie to me." "And what lesson is that?" I asked. "That I'm your property? That you're incompetent," he roared. "You threw $5,000 down a drain. I manage millions, Mara. I built this life, and you treat our finances like a charity fund for losers." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Vance, I think it's best if we pause." "We're not pausing," Derek sneered. "She wants a divorce. She's got one, and she's going to regret it." He stormed out of the room. The heavy door slammed, shaking the framed degrees on the wall. I sat back down. My hands were shaking, but I didn't hide them. "I'm sorry, Mr. Henderson," I said. "Please continue." The drive home was separate. I took an Uber. When I got to the house, the locks had already been changed. My key wouldn't turn. I wasn't surprised. I sat on the porch swing, waiting. I took out my phone. I dialed the non-emergency police line. "I'd like to request a civil standby," I said. "My husband has locked me out of the marital residence, and I need to retrieve my belongings." A squad car arrived 20 minutes later. The officer was young, polite. "He can't lock you out, ma'am," he said. "Not without a court order." "I know," I said, "but he's upset." Derek opened the door when the police knocked. He looked disheveled. He was holding a glass of scotch. "Officer," he said, "this woman is trespassing." "She's your wife, sir. This is her residence." "Not for long," Derek spat. "Until a judge says otherwise, she lives here. Now let her in, or I'll have to arrest you for illegal eviction." Derek stepped back. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. I walked into the house. I went upstairs. I grabbed a suitcase. I didn't pack clothes. I packed the hard drive from the safe. I packed the jewelry he had given me, assets I could sell. I packed the files from his desk that I had photocopied weeks ago. When I came downstairs, he was standing in the foyer. The police officer was waiting on the porch. "You think you won," Derek said softly. "But you lost, Mara. You lost the lifestyle. You lost the protection. You're going to be alone. And your sister, she's going to die in a gutter, and it will be your fault because you won't have the money to save her." "Maybe," I said. I pulled out my phone. I pressed play. "I'll call my lawyer right now, on speaker." "Hello, Steve? It's Derek." "Listen, Mara and I worked it out." Derek's face went white. "I recorded it," I said. "The fake call, the gaslighting, the fraud. I have the metadata, Derek. I have the logs showing you never dialed out." He stared at the phone. "If you try to hide assets," I said, "if you try to smear me, I will play this for the judge. I will play it for your board of directors. I will play it for your mother." His jaw worked, but no sound came out. "I don't want your money," I lied. "I just want what's mine. The lake house, my 401k and half the savings." "You're a bitch," he whispered. "I'm a logistical manager," I corrected, "and I just audited your life." I walked out the door, past the police officer, and into the waiting taxi. The settlement took 6 months. I didn't get everything. He had better lawyers. He hid money in shell companies I couldn't trace without spending more than they were worth. But I got the lake house. I got my freedom. I sat on the dock, watching the sun set over the water. The air was cold. Fall was coming. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. "Need $500. Rent due. Please, Mara. Last time." I looked at the message. The shadow plot had been exposed in the deposition. Derek's lawyer had laid it all out. The transfers, the lies, the enabling. My family knew. My parents called me irresponsible. They said I had ruined my marriage for a junkie. They were wrong about the marriage. Derek ruined that. But they were right about the enabling. I looked at the water. I thought about the test. Derek had tested my loyalty and I had failed. But I had tested his humanity, and he had failed too. We were both broken people, trying to control things we couldn't. He tried to control me. I tried to control Chloe's addiction. We both used money as a weapon. I typed a reply to Chloe. "I can't. I love you, but I can't." I blocked the number. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Harder than running to the courthouse. Harder than facing Derek. I put the phone down. I was alone. The house was empty. The silence was absolute. I had won the game. I had beaten the villain. But as the cold wind coming off the lake cut through my sweater, I realized that in a war like this, there are no winners. There are only survivors. I pulled my knees to my chest and watched the dark water lap against the wood, waiting for the dawn. I learned that intimacy is a blind spot. We think that because we share a bed with someone, we know them. We think that because we know how they take their coffee, we know their soul. But people are deep, dark wells. You can drop a coin in and never hear it hit the bottom. I survived because I stopped looking at my husband as a partner and started looking at him as a variable in a spreadsheet. I detached. I observed. I acted. But the cost was high. I lost the illusion of safety. I look at every contract, every smile, every "I love you," and search for the fine print. I am safe now, but I am cold. Derek claimed he filed the papers to stop the bleeding of the family finances because Mara was secretly funding her sister's addiction. Was he actually the villain for trying to protect their assets from her enabling? Or was his method, the test, what made him evil? Does the end justify the means when your partner is lying about money? Let me know whose side you're on. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.